There are remasters and remakes that exist today because that game was just basically old. And then there are these remasters and remakes that exist because that game was just ahead of everybody else back at the time. Speaking of the devil, a Max Payne 3 remaster or even a light touch remake falls quite squarely into the second category, not because the game is broken, not because it needs saving, but because the industry has finally grown into what Max Payne 3 was already doing back in 2012. In fact, if Rockstar is still following its so-called pandemic era roadmap, as a few insiders suggested, then the idea of Max Payne 3 returning to modern platforms isn't just believable, it's pretty much borderline inevitable. And if it happens, it won't be a nostalgia play. We all know that it's gonna be a reintroduction, a reminder, maybe even a correction. Because Max Payne 3 was not misunderstood or anything, it was just a little uncomfortable. Back when it launched, Max Payne 3 arrived in a gaming landscape obsessed with empowerment. Power fantasies, progression systems, XP bars, skill trees. You were supposed to feel stronger, faster, better with every hour you played. And then the Rockstar showed up and said, what if you just don't? What if you feel worse as you go? Max Payne 3 is a game about erosion, about watching a man's identity sandblasted away by guilt, addiction, and violence, and then asking you to pull the trigger anyway. That alone make it feel shockingly modern today, which is why a remaster is now gonna hit different. Technically speaking, yes, it makes perfect sense. Higher resolutions, locked 60 frames per second or even 120 frames per second, modern control latency, cleaned up animations, sharper textures, the kind of treatment Rockstar has already proven it can deliver when it cares. Max Payne 3's gunplay is still elite, we think, but imagine it without the friction of, aging hardware. Imagine every shoot, dodge, landing exactly when your hands expect it to. That alone we think will definitely sell the remaster. But this isn't really about tech, it's about timing. We're living in an era where character-driven, emotionally heavy games aren't niche anymore. I mean, like Alan Wake 2, The Last of Us Part 2, Disco Elysium, Baldur's Gate 3. Players aren't scared of discomfort, they're hungry for it. And Max Payne 3, quietly, confidently, already speaks that language. This is a game that refuses to romanticize violence even while presenting it with impossible style. Bullet time looks beautiful, but the aftermath is always ugly in this game. For example, the bodies crumble, bloodstains linger. Per se, Max doesn't quip his way through carnage, he narrates it like a man testifying against himself. Additionally, James McFerry's performance is the spine of that experience. Without exaggeration, it's just one of the most defining voice performances in gaming history. Not because it's loud, because it's tired. Every line sounds like it costs Max something to say, and a remaster is not going to replace that, it will definitely amplify it. Better facial animations, cleaner audio mixing, more expressive eyes. Let the performance breathe the way modern hardwares do allow today. And narratively, a Max Payne 3 has aged like a loaded gun left on the table. In 2012, its Brazil setting was controversial, of course. Too different, too far from noir New York, too political, too bleak. In hindsight, it was Rockstar at its most fearless. You see, Sao Paulo isn't a change of scenery, it's a moral escalation. This is an organized crime with rules and code. It's chaos, privatized violence. Death squad, human trafficking disguised as policy. Max isn't stepping into a mystery, he's stepping into a machine that doesn't even care whether he survives. The story will definitely land harder now, not softer. And mechanically, Max Payne 3 remains Rockstar's most precise action game to this day, full stop. The weight of movement, the friction with Max dives, the way enemies react to being shot, not as targets, but as bodies. Bullet time was not a gimmick layered on top of the combat, it was the combat. Every room becomes a puzzle of angles when you're in there. Timing, the survival instinct, you don't dominate spaces, you barely escape them in this game. A modern remaster does not need to, reinvent that, it just needs to respect it. That's why the rumored plan, pairing Remedy's Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes with a Max Payne 3 remaster, is such a clean, almost poetic move. You get the myth rebuilt and then you get the aftermath unlocked. The arc becomes cleaner, the contrast sharper, like you watch Max transform from tragic noir hero to burned out survivor. Same man, different scars. And here's the thing people forget. Max Payne 3 is not anti-Remedy, you see, it's post-Remedy. It's what happens after the poetry stops working, after metaphors cannot save you anymore. That's why it matters that Rockstar doesn't try to fix it. The game's harshness is kind of the point. Even the structure, the relentless pacing, the aggressive editing, the intrusive text overlays, all of it reflects Max's fractured mental state. The game doesn't let you rest because Max cannot himself. In 2012, some players found that sort of exhausting. In 2026, that's called commitment to theme. And then there's, of course, multiplayer, the forgotten piece. Max Payne 3's multiplayer was better than it had any right to be. Bullet time layered into competitive modes, dynamic maps, crew systems, risk-heavy mechanics that rewarded aggression and awareness instead of grinding. Rockstar shut it down in 2021, quietly, and with it went a genuinely unique online experience. A remaster is the only realistic way that comes back, and if it does, it suddenly feels fresh again. But maybe the most important reason Max Payne 3 deserves a return is simpler than all of this. It's one of Rockstar's most honest games. There's no satire, no exaggerated parody to hide behind, no wink to the camera. This isn't Grand Theft Auto laughing at the world, this is Rockstar staring at addiction, corruption, and self-destruction and refusing to blink. Max doesn't save the city, he doesn't fix the system, he doesn't even fully save himself, he just stops running. The final note, quiet, restrained, almost peaceful, lands because the game earned it, and it lands even harder today. In fact, in an industry that often confuses bigger with better. A Max Payne 3 remaster wouldn't be about cashing in, it would be about reclaiming something Rockstar doesn't really make anymore. And if Rockstar's smart, really smart, they're not gonna oversell it. No bloated feature list, no rewritten scenes, no unnecessary re-recordings, just a confident re-release that says this still stands. Because it does. Max Payne 3 does not need redemption. It needs reappraisal. And if it comes back sharper, smoother, faster, meaner, it won't feel like a relic. It'll feel like a warning that some games do not age, they wait.